Joined now by our good friend Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News. More so the Sporting News right now. I guess kind of a summer off from the BTN.
Yeah, that's how it usually goes. There's
pretty much, you really probably don't do anything with them over the summer, I'm assuming, right?
Very rarely. On occasion, they'll have me in to guest on Big Ten Today, the noon show, the noon Eastern show that Dave Revson does. Last year, for instance, I don't think they're going to take any more West Coast teams, but last year when USC and UCLA joined the league, obviously there was some time for some conversation there. But for the most part, the BTN stuff doesn't start back up until basketball starts to bounce.
We talked a little bit about that yesterday, and USC is going to be one of those teams that I think really benefits from the portal / NIL. Not that they had dropped off into oblivion, but they also just weren't a part of that elite, upper echelon elite, which most teams weren't, granted. But they're coming back, and I think that if it's not this year, next year when they join the Big Ten, perfect timing, they're going to do what Nebraska didn't do for the Big Ten, for one thing, that's not why they were brought in. I know that, but that's when Nebraska came in, everybody kind of thought that they were going to really put another anchor over on that west side, and it just didn't happen. And so now the divisions are going away, so that doesn't really matter. But when you have a team like that, I think that they're going to rise, and they're going to be very advantageous with the transfer portal and NIL, and they're going to rise from the ashes.
You know, it's funny, Jim. I was sitting here wondering as you were delivering that, as you began that,
if I was ever going to finish.
No, I was wondering, is he talking hoops or is he talking football? And then he mentioned Nebraska, and you answered the question. So that's I think that the league change can help USC in a lot of ways. It can provide them with greater mountains to climb, so to speak. If you look at it from the standpoint of they're going to play, if they reach that peak again, if they get back to where they were in the aughts, if they do that, then they're going to have to play either Michigan or Ohio State or Penn State or someone like that in the conference championship game. They'll probably meet. I don't know. We still don't know what the schedules will be, but they'll probably meet on occasion. So they'll have those challenges in conference and in regular season, and then the possibility of a conference championship game against those sorts of teams. And so it does provide them with a greater proving ground than they could get in the Pac-12. But I think Lincoln Riley's hire a year and a half ago was really important to them, to restoring what USC football can be and should be.
Does it interest you at all in how the Big Ten is going to go about scheduling when they do away with divisions? Because it seems like in the past, the way the Big Ten has done some scheduling, and I'm going to use Iowa and Nebraska as examples here, oftentimes you'll see Nebraska on the schedule will play both Ohio State and Michigan because it's a huge regular season draw. You get a lot of eyeballs on those games because of the history of Nebraska and obviously because of the history of Ohio State and Michigan. Iowa, on the other hand, has missed both of those teams in the same season or will only play one because I'm assuming that it just doesn't have the same allure. It doesn't have the same appeal on a national scale. I'm curious to see whether the Big Ten will slot some matchups against USC, Ohio State, USC, Michigan, some of those high-level games, or if the Big Ten steers away from that a little bit to help its college football playoff chances. I mean, maybe it doesn't make as much of a difference when you're going to switch to the 12-team format, but it's an interesting, to me, kind of sort of dynamic. What are you going to do? Are you going to try to protect your best teams in the league, or are you going to put them against some of the better opponents, the more appealing games on the regular season to appeal your television networks and partners?
Yeah, I think first of all, that there's no way they can, based on the contracts that they signed, they need to provide quality programming for the various networks. That you can't just hide those matchups away. And I think the fact that you're going to a 12-team playoff now makes it so that you can do that without being punitive. Sure. It may affect seeding, but if the teams are great, they're still going to find a way into the playoff. There are going to be 2 to 3 Big Ten teams in most playoff years. Probably more often 2, but on the great year, you might have a 3. And it's the same with the SEC. There are going to be 2 to 3 most years. And they may, if they continue on if they continued on the same path, each league continued on the same path that they've been on for the last 5 or 6 years, then it would probably be SEC lean toward 3 and some years 2. So, but you're still going to have that many from both leagues because they've been competitive significantly for a long period of time, and it's unlikely that with the expansion to include Texas, Oklahoma on the one side, SC, UCLA on the other, that success would abate.
Yeah, and so looking forward, I think the Big Ten will do exactly what they wanted to do, which is try to keep up with the Joneses. But I'm wondering how the Big Ten as a league, the SEC is deep. I mean, they kind of, I'm not going to say they just keep rotating teams because Georgia's been good for a while, but they just rotate. It's Georgia. It's Alabama. Auburn has been good. They've had.
Have they?
I just think
I was thinking the same thing.
Like when we're talking,
they've just been a little deeper.
Have they been good? Yeah, but I mean, Iowa's been good. I mean, we're talking Georgia, Alabama, LSU, and in the other side, we're talking Michigan, Ohio State, and then the Penn State, USC. Maybe that's the way it's been. I mean, we haven't seen significant depth in either league in terms of championship caliber competition. We've seen very good teams like Wisconsin, Northwestern, Iowa. Those teams be very good on occasion, but not championship good. And we've seen
the rest of it
in
then?
the SEC.
Where's the rest of the talent? It's got to be out there somewhere.
I don't understand.
Or is it the elite talent? Why are there not more? I don't want to say teams that are as good as Alabama or Georgia, because once you get to be just better than everybody else, you're better than everybody else.
Jim, my theory on this has been that the nature of the playoff, it has over a very short period of time told athletes, if you want to play in this thing, here's where you got to go. You got to go Ohio State. You got to go to Alabama. You got to go to LSU. Gradually Georgia, Oklahoma, if you're out the Texas way. I mean, that's how it's been. And that's why we need 12 teams, so that it's not that way. People look at it and say, well, look, we've had the same teams dominate. Yeah, but that's the point. Now, if you're between family considerations and name, image, and likeness, if you're a terrific let's say you're a terrific high school football prospect that grows up in Western Pennsylvania, where I did. Let's say Elizabeth Forward. Hey, let's say they wind up with a 5-star prospect. It'll be the first one in forever, but let's say they did. Okay, so then, the last 5 years, he's had to go to Ohio State if he wants to play in the playoff and be reasonably close to home. But now he doesn't have to. If he goes to the ACC through Pitt, he's got a shot. There's an automatic bid. If he goes to the Big Ten through Penn State, he's got a shot. There's an automatic bid. The options are open. And I'm not saying Ohio State's still not a great spot for him. Okay, that's great, but choose it because it's the absolute best place for you to go, not because it's the only place you can go within a reasonable distance and still have a really good shot at playing for a championship. And I think that's true all across the country. I've been a big believer that until we get the 12-team playoff with automatic bids, it's not a real championship. But from a standpoint of those schools that have been recruiting those elite players, that has been an absolute boon to their success. it has been huge for them to be able to say, hey, you want to be in a playoff? Those teams never get there. We get there all the time.
One of the arguments that really has bothered me since we've been talking about the expansion from 4 teams to 12 teams is that everybody seems to make the comment, well, this isn't the NCAA tournament. This isn't college basketball. It's still college football. You're still going to have the top end talent. And my argument always to that is it took us, 30, 40 years, and we just now have seen the second 16 seed upset a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They're right. They're early on, it's probably going to be 4 teams that are dominating the 12-team field. But over time, as you mentioned, when you got more play, when you got a more parity, more of these 4- and 5-star athletes going to places maybe where they can study what they want to study, be closer to home, whatever the case might be, have a good relationship with a head coach or an assistant coach, whatever the circumstance, over time, you're going to see maybe that 12 seed never wins, but maybe the 12 seed gets to the Final Four. Whatever the case might be, it's going to level the playing field, in my opinion, to some degree. And I don't understand why people try to compare. Like, it's not college basketball. I agree. But that doesn't mean we can't have some sort of balance. And by the way, we see upsets throughout the course of the regular season in college football all the time. I don't know why people think when we get into a tournament format, it's never going to happen.
You know, I made the comparison to a former colleague that when the NCAA tournament began to expand for real and allow multiple programs from the same conference, which the first year that was true was 1976. I think IU fans might remember that season a little bit. 1976 was the first year that you could have multiple programs from the same conference get in the tournament. And what happened? Multiple programs from the same conference played for the championship. 1976, Indiana versus Michigan. And so it automatically started to change things because up until then, the year before, UCLA won their 10th championship in 12 years. And then all of a sudden it's open and, okay, so Wooden's retirement affected that. John Wooden's retirement at the end of the 1975 season impacted the expansion of opportunity for others. But Nick Saban ain't going to coach forever. So that's going to impact as well. I mean, we've seen just in the Big Ten, we saw Ohio State dominate Michigan. I mean, and I'm using the word dominate in maybe in the weakest possible sense, because I don't know that that word is strong enough to capture what Ohio State did to Michigan for 2 decades. And now each of the last 2 years, we've seen that flip. We've seen Michigan win that game. So it is possible for the power to shift. It happens all the time in college football. It wasn't until this playoff that we started to see that power concentrate in the hands of a very few schools. Before that, it rotated. Yeah, there was always a dominant school, but there was Texas, that Texas UCLA game, that Texas USC game in 2005. After that, we had different teams pop up. It's not always been the same teams. It just has always been the same teams within the college football playoff era, which began in 2014.